Hmm.
Hey, how's it going out there, everyone? Joshua here again, along with Boz. Another episode, another edition. We're gonna call this here the Jack Johnson Juneteenth show. We're gonna be talking boxing, of course, keeping the focus on Jack Johnson. You know, he was the first Black World Heavyweight Champion. But how you doing, Boz? How's your day been?
Yeah, it's been kind of slow, but nice. It's like Sunday, typical Sunday here in the world.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah, oh yeah. Looks like you're getting a tan. You've been out there in the sun.
yeah, I have. Thanks for noticing. Yeah, we've
Good,
had
good stuff.
very shifting weather late this month anyway. So, but still, there has been enough sun to get some tan anyway.
Yeah, it's been pretty hot here where I'm at. Yeah, it was super hot and
Oh
windy
yeah, and
yesterday.
still you are wearing that hoodie.
I know I'm on the inside. I needed to throw this on there. I got to represent, even if it means I'm sweating like sweating bullets
Oh,
underneath. So
well,
I
that's
had to
very,
represent.
very, very admirable. You sacrifice yourself for your channel,
Yeah,
for
without
your
a doubt,
hobby.
without a doubt.
Cool.
So yeah, so everyone is joining. Welcome, welcome. Of course, happy Juneteenth. This is celebration day here in America. At least this is the day. Well, Juneteenth in itself symbolizes June 19th, 1865, refers to the day when enslaved African Americans learned of their emancipation, and the significance of it, in a sense, is and Jack Johnson is Galveston, Texas, is a key place because that was the last place. It's known as the home of Juneteenth, where the individuals or enslaved people were notified. So it's become the home of Juneteenth. So that was the last of all 50 states, the last location. So that's what that represents. And of course, as we know, probably the top boxer from there, factoring all things in, is none other than John Arthur Johnson, aka Jack Johnson himself,
Hmm.
born on March 31st, 1878. So that's why we want to come on and have a little bit of a discussion on the great Jack Johnson. Happy Juneteenth, everyone, again, as mentioned. So thinking about that, Johnson, he had a record of 54 wins, 11 losses, 9 draws, 34 wins by KO. He also had a number of no decisions, about 11 and 3 no contests, but really
Hmm.
he had more than that because back in those days, you know, they had a lot of fights that probably were off the books, not fully reported or recorded. And he fought a number of exhibitions and all that stuff. But just thinking about the overall career of Jack Johnson, yeah, he was very successful and all that stuff. I know you're familiar with him. You have
Yeah,
any general thoughts on Jack Johnson, or at least what you know of him?
yeah. Well, he had a really impressive career, and I didn't know he actually fought until he was quite old, when he retired, and that was
Oh
like
yeah,
something you don't see today, really, very much fighters fighting at that age, and yeah. And I don't know how old Sugar Ray Robinson was when he retired, but he wasn't that old. I'm sure.
no,
I
no,
just
definitely
checked.
not that old. He was past
Yeah,
it, but not there.
yeah. So yeah, I know that. For instance, Jack Johnson, he beat Jim Jeffries when he came back out of retirement. Because they thought he could beat Jack Johnson, and for
Came back out
obvious
of retirement. Oh yeah,
political reasons.
yeah, 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 yeah.
What
That was
happened
a
there?
that was the case right there. That was a big one. That was a
Yeah,
huge fight. That was after the search for a great white hope when
yeah,
James J. Jeffries was lured out of
that's
retirement in an effort to come take the throne, rekindle the mantle. Shout out Ricky Womack, Ricky C. Good seeing you last night. Yeah, hey, good seeing you. Appreciate
hey
it. Yeah, definitely looking
Ricky.
forward to chatting with you, Ricky. I know you got some
Yeah.
good things making happen representing DC right
So
here. Ricky
yeah,
C. Is
I
amateur
was gonna
boxing,
say.
making it happen, putting on some great shows.
was gonna say I think that was the only loss of James J. Jeffries because I don't think he had any others because but he was stopped in
Yeah,
the 15th round. Yeah, I see
yeah. Now
now
it was
again.
it was a tough task. It was always a tough
Yeah.
task that fight. Some would
Mm,
call it a fool's errand, but yeah, that was the only loss of his career. He actually had come out of retirement. He hadn't fought
yeah.
since 1904. This took place in 1910, so it was just
Yeah.
under 6 years.
And 4th of July, even it says.
Yeah. Big day right there. And he was
Yeah.
overweight when he actually,
Mm.
signed to do the deal, so he had to drop, like,
Oh,
as I
yeah, right.
understand it, maybe over 100 plus pounds to get to
Yeah, he was
fighting
right.
shape. So I think that's
Mm.
probably where the bulk of his time was spent. But he was in good shape,
Yeah.
just looking from a physical standpoint. But it was going to be tough that many years removed from the ring for sure, regardless
Yeah.
of who you are.
I mean, he was one of the strongest boxers physically that ever like fought. That's what they say, and he was also like quite athletic. Also, he could run fast and jump high and yeah, stuff like that. I have read rather extensively about Jeffries, but yeah, I
Yeah,
don't also. Of course, I heard of Jack Johnson long ago in movies and TV and stuff like that because there's
yeah,
also a movie about him made and yeah, stuff. Or
yeah.
not one but two, I believe, at least movies that are about him.
Yeah, yeah. You're right. Yeah, I need to check those out. I think we were talking about this in an episode or one of the older episodes. There's a movie called The Great White Hope. I guess that's on Jeffries.
Yeah, James Earl Jones. Yeah,
Oh, James Earl
that's
Jones. He plays Jack Johnson, right?
yeah, yeah, and
Cool,
that's
cool.
like I know they show how he lost to Jess Willard, but he's not called that in the movie. I don't think that that Earl Jones plays. I mean, the character is not called Jack Johnson, I believe,
Oh
because I
yeah,
don't know, more maybe for some legal reasons or something. I don't
yeah. You're right. Yeah, I do recall us having that discussion that
know.
they changed the names. You just kind of had to kind of guess who
Yeah,
represented who.
I know that the actor that plays Jess Willard was even taller than the real Jess Willard. Actually,
Oh
he was
wow,
like 6'9", like Fury today, and Jess was like 6'7" or
six six
6'6".
six six. He
Yeah,
was around 6'6".
yeah, and a half or
Okay.
something. Yeah,
Oh yeah. 6 and a half, somewhere around there.
yeah,
So yeah, he okay, that's cool. I gotta check that out. I still haven't checked it out yet.
yeah. So
Did
he
you think it was
beat
a good movie?
which one?
The Great White Hope.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's. I haven't really. I mean, I truly think I've seen it like very long time ago, but yeah, I think it was a good movie. Yeah, pretty good.
Okay.
I like James Earl Jones as, as an
Oh yeah,
actor.
yeah. He's definitely a good actor. He's
Yeah,
definitely good. So yeah, that I was wondering about that. I'll have to check it out for sure.
yeah, and he's about the same size, I think, as Jack Johnson, so he looked very authentic,
hmm
and maybe even looked a little bit like him facially. I don't know.
Yeah, I did see one picture of him. Yeah, he does. They did have him kind of have Jack Johnson's look.
Yeah, very
Supposedly there's
big guy.
supposedly there's a new movie coming at some point, played by Marshall Ali, or I think that's his name.
Oh yeah, that's
It's
the
supposed to be a
guy.
Jack
Yeah,
Johnson movie.
he's a very good actor. Yeah, I know
Yeah,
that.
yeah, I think he'll do a good job.
Yeah. So they are doing another movie about yeah. Well, that's about time. I think. I don't
Yeah,
think they've done a movie on Johnson for a really long time. Uh, yeah, like since the 70s or something.
yeah, we've talked about boxers having these great stories. We've had many characters over the years in the sport of boxing that could make for some very good movies. So yeah, there are a number of them who have great stories out there. But yeah, Jack Johnson, yeah, him having a movie that would be a very good one. I think it would be big at this day and age, especially. There's so many angles you can go with the storylines, but it is certainly
Yeah,
triumphant in some sense.
yeah.
Uh,
There was he had a white wife. Isn't that so? Also, he had a white
yeah,
wife. I think.
yeah, he was defying
Yeah,
the times. He was high
yeah,
profile. flashy. So yeah, people think of like Floyd Mayweather and all that stuff, but Jack Johnson, he took it to a whole new level. He was doing it in polarizing times, and
Yeah,
he and he wasn't ashamed and he wasn't scared to be out there and be himself. But yeah, he did have a white wife, and and I know the establishment, they didn't like it. They had been
yeah,
looking to take him down for a long time.
yeah. Of course, of course.
There,
Such
there were
were the times. Yeah,
Yeah, very polarizing times. Definitely, this was during the era of Jim Crow and all that stuff. So,
yeah.
hey, the way he was able to handle that type of pressure, I mean, you got to commend him in that regard, especially when you're in
Mm.
these situations where you're fighting and the crowd is probably like 90 something percent white or whatever, or probably
Yeah,
90, 98, 99, probably
99. Yeah,
99. Yeah,
with some.
99%
Yeah,
actually.
there
Uh,
weren't many blacks in those crowds. I don't
yeah,
know. Maybe
yeah. There
some.
probably were other fighters who were there on the building or something. So yeah,
Yeah,
99.99% or whatever. But they were able to actually do some pretty good thing, or he was able to handle himself pretty well going through that process. Hyphy, shout out
oh,
Hyphy. Big ups. Appreciate you dropping in, Cali. But appreciate you dropping in for sure. Again,
cool,
Josh
cool.
Shabazz here, Jack Johnson, Juneteenth show, talking about the great Jack Johnson. So on December 26, 1908 is when he actually defeated Tiny Tommy Burns, or the
Oh
little
yeah,
giant from Hanover or something of that nature. He beat him
yeah.
in Australia, of all places. But Burns had been a traveling heavyweight champion at that particular time, and he had fought a number of guys, and he had gone to the different countries and beat their champions, whether that was over in the UK. He ended up making his way down
Mm.
to Australia, and Johnson had been following him and clamoring for a shot. He was finally able to secure one of the shots, or secure a shot at the world heavyweight title. Uh, so the opportunity presented itself in Australia, and the reason behind it was because Burns got a massive purse of $30,000, which for that
Mm.
time was the equivalent of around $850 to $900,000, which was huge and massive at that time, nearly $1 million. While Johnson, he got some small purse, but it was the
Yeah,
opportunity that I think that really mattered for him in that case. And of course, if you haven't seen the video, there are videos of the fight out there up until the very last second, and it was a fight in which Johnson pretty much dominated Tommy Burns, who is still the smallest heavyweight in history at 5'7", but he was a scrappy young fighter,
yeah,
or a scrappy and tough fighter. So he held his own fairly well with some of the other guys he was in there with, but Johnson was on a
yeah.
completely different level.
Yeah, and I just seen that actually that fight it was not completed. It was supposed to be 20 rounds, but it was stopped
Yeah,
by the police in the 14th or after the
yeah,
14th round.
yeah.
But that
14th
was
round.
the agreement because I guess they didn't want them, to riot or anything after. I don't know what, but
Yeah,
anyway, it must have been. Yeah,
yeah. So there was they cut the cameras off as well because they didn't want the footage showing of white man at that time getting knocked out by a black fighter at heavyweight. At least that is the case. And
yeah,
it, essentially the promoter was Hugh McIntosh of Australia, and shout out Random McKissick Thoughts, who I've had a number of conversations with. But he was big in promoting major fights in Australia, to include the likes of stuff with Sam Langford, Sam McVeigh, all of those other fighters that are all those other heavyweights that are out there. Bill Lane, another one. But basically, he was the promoter for this fight, and he actually refereed the fight. So he was in the ring there because they couldn't agree on an actual official. But Hugh McIntosh, he had the cameras rolling. They didn't agree on what the proceeds or splits would be for the motion picture footage, as they call it. So McIntosh, he just had the cameras rolling anyway, even though the intent was that wasn't going to happen. And it's a good thing
Mm,
because we were able to actually see this footage here some 100
yeah,
plus years later. But yeah, they were able to continue filming, and then it was cut off just as Burns was going down. But you can see in that fight that
all right.
Johnson was just too massive too good
Yeah.
for Burns, and Burns really couldn't do anything. And Johnson being a defensive fighter, he nullified his game almost completely.
Yeah, that's right. And he also, before that, he knocked out Ball Fitzsimmons actually in the second round.
Oh yeah, yeah,
Before
yeah.
that,
So yeah, that's the thing. Johnson had a pretty deep resume before getting to that point. Yeah, Fitzsimmons was
yeah,
on his ledger. And Fitzsimmons, he was one of those guys who would fight anyone, who was the first
yeah,
free weight world champion, and he was
yeah,
really more of a middleweight for
yeah.
his
He
career.
was. He was never a heavyweight for sure. He might have been on like a small light heavy or something.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. He probably would have been more in that range, or if it was,
Super middleweight. Yeah,
or if he was around at that time, the 168-pound division, you could
yeah.
probably would have competed in there.
But he was very strong. I mean, physically he was strong and he could punch and all that.
The
So
fighting blacksmith is what they call him.
yeah,
That's where he learned his trade. But yeah, he was certainly strong, and he was one of the
yeah.
biggest punchers in boxing history. Certainly one of the top 10 punchers in boxing history, maybe even top five. That's if you consider it just from a pound for pound perspective. But that's where he got his
Hmm.
claim to fame in some sense. Was yeah, he was knocking out these guys, even though it was bigger than him. And he took on the best heavyweights of his time as well, to include Johnson. He fought Jeffries twice, and that's who he actually lost his heavyweight championship to, even though he was for the most part outboxing Jeffries in each fight. Just the size
Hmm.
became a factor. You know, how we were talking with Jeffries, who was a bigger heavyweight for the time,
Yeah.
but he was around 6'1", 6'2", and
Hmm.
he had great endurance, and he was a strong fighter.
Very, very strong and yeah, very like athletic. If you're talking about Jeffries, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yes,
Yeah,
Jeffries.
yeah, he was, yeah. Hmm.
Yeah, yeah, he was. So also Johnson, leading up to that, he had been in with the other great black heavyweights of that time, the likes of Joe Jeanette multiple times, as well as Sam McVeigh. So he had beaten
Yeah,
these guys. He had beat Sam Langford as well, even though Langford was not fully at heavyweight at the time that he fought him. But
yeah.
that was one of the things. So he came into it being the actual world heavyweight champion after he had defeated Denver Ed Smith in 1903, or Denver Ed Martin rather, in 1903. There is a Denver Ed Smith as well, though.
Yeah. There was, yeah. I mean, he had one loss, but that was by disqualification to Joe Jeanette.
Oh
So
yeah,
yeah,
yeah. You know, rough and tumble affairs back then for sure.
yeah.
Uh, so, but
And
yeah,
then
he.
early on, yeah, he was knocked out by Joe Choinsky. Actually, you
Yeah,
know
yeah.
about that?
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's always a key moment of his career. That is the case. The great Joe Truinski, knocked him
yeah.
out, and then they were subsequently jailed. And during that time they spent together, Joe was teaching him some of the tricks of the trade, because Joe, he
Wow.
was a very good fighter from his time there,
Yeah.
and he taught him and mentioned to him some of the things that made Johnson shift to being more of a defensive fighter, which ultimately
Mm,
benefited him in his career as well, because Johnson did have offense. A lot of what you
yeah.
see with him on the defensive side, but he would drag some fights out and then wait for that perfect time to go in and get that knockout. But Chewinski was critical in that, almost a
Yeah. He
lesson
was.
learned.
Maybe he became like a better counter puncher or something like that. Johnson. Yeah.
Yeah, could have
I
very
mean, yeah.
well. I had this
Probably.
I had this guy going. I stopped going back and forth with him in the comments of one of the Johnson versus Sullivan videos. I think he's being unrealistic, but he said Johnson lost to a bunch of bums. He called Joe Chewinski a bum. So I put up a posting asking, "Hey, who thinks Joe Chewinski was a bum?" or something like that in a roundabout way. But some of these guys who are in these comment sections. I know some of them are trolls, but they say some crazy stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of that unseriousness on the internet, like
But he just couldn't take the fact that I, along with many, believe that Johnson would have beat John L. Sullivan. I give
mm,
Sullivan his props. You can look at my video to give him his props. I just think the
yeah,
Johnson matchup would be a bad matchup for him, especially under the Marcus of Queensberry rules. Now, if it were a bare
Mm,
knuckle fight where you could do all of the holding and throwing and all of that other stuff, then yeah, of course, that's in Sullivan's favor. And maybe if it's a longer fight, it's in Sullivan's favor of giving it that
yeah.
sort of notion. But yeah, in ring, Marcus of Queensberry, yeah, Johnson takes him.
Yeah, he was obviously difficult to beat, in his prime, very difficult. And
Yeah,
he had the big punch and just a strong fighter who was, very durable and yeah, simple as that. He was just too strong for most of the others at the time, obviously.
yeah,
too good also, I guess. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
And the question comes up at times like, where does Johnson rank all time? I haven't really did a verbatim or true list or anything of that nature, but I know, as far as I'm concerned, he's a top ten heavyweight all time, maybe top five. I had to really think through it. But if you look at what he was able to do for at his particular time, some of the people he beat, even though his title reign in itself wasn't the best as far as the competition he fought, because of course he didn't defend his title during his reign against the likes of Sam Langford, Sam
yeah.
McVeigh, and Joe Jeanette, who were some of his peers at that particular time, who were of that level to be able to compete with him.
Mm,
And I think that, of course, that has to be mentioned. But as far as his run leading up to that and becoming champion and being able to defend the title, he's definitely one of the higher ranking all time, in my
yeah,
opinion.
yeah. He does deserve that ranking. Yeah, I mean, there are really few heavyweights in history that had a better career. You might say, like Joe Louis and Muhammad Ali. Maybe
Yep.
Larry Holmes to a degree, but he doesn't. Yeah,
Yeah.
Larry Holmes, his his level of opposition can be questioned. That's all I'm gonna say.
Yeah,
Anyway.
that's the thing that hurts him as far as he dominated. It's at a time just when a lot of the top heavyweights of the '70s were pretty much done at that particular
Yeah,
time. But
yeah,
Larry was able to dominate, and he beat some great fighters who were, some of them were like, for instance, Muhammad Ali, who were older at the time.
yeah.
But he was a dominant champion.
He was, of course, for 7 years he was a champion, and even though that wasn't the same title, many people forget that he vacated the WBC
No,
belt
no.
in 1983, I think, and then he was the IBF champion after that for 2 years. Yeah, but
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
I mean, he was dominant, even though he got a few. Like I'm sure you've seen the Tim Witherspoon fight. That was very controversial decision, and also
Yeah.
against Carl the Truth Williams. That was even more so. I
Oh,
would
yeah.
say.
Carl Williams. Yeah.
I thought he really won that fight clearly. That guy, the Truth Williams. Yeah.
Oh yeah, he was a
So
heavyweight of that era. Shout out to
yeah,
Bruce Gas. He's not in here, but Bruce Gas Boxing and Jazz. Check him out. But I had hopped on one of his streams. I caught the tail end at least earlier in the week where he was covering Larry Holmes. They looked at Larry Holmes versus Jerry Cooney
Cooley.
and
Yeah.
that fight, and
Another.
it
Yeah.
was
The
controversial.
last. The last big like race war, let's say, or political fight.
Yeah, they were pointing out the fact that Larry Holmes seemed to be beating Cooney, but they had Cooney up on the cards at the time of the stoppage.
Hmm. I don't know about if that was correct. I'll have to see the fight.
From
I
all
don't think
indications,
that's
yeah, it
right.
wasn't correct.
Yeah,
And,
yeah,
and,
he
and
was also dropped, I believe, before that, at least once or twice.
yeah,
So yeah,
crazy times. Yeah, crazy
yeah,
times.
he
But yeah,
wasn't. Yeah, I know he had one like maybe more, in one round he hurt Larry with a body shot in the fourth, I believe, but that was at the end of the round. So he probably didn't really win that either. So
yeah, yeah,
yeah, that
probably
was
not.
crazy. That hype for Cooney and all that stuff with Reagan, like promising to call him if he won,
Oh
and
wow, yeah.
yeah, he
That's
didn't
funny.
really.
Spoiled that train.
Yeah, I didn't really care about Holmes, or like he wouldn't call him ever,
Yeah, it is funny, but yeah, one of those things. I think it just went with the time, for sure.
Yeah,
Um, but yeah, but Jack, yeah, he. I see someone mentioned. Shout out to John Perkinson. He always comments on stuff. Knowledgeable
mm,
guy, good stuff. He said mentioned well tutored by Chinsky. He was tutored by Jackson, young Peter Jackson, or not young
yeah,
Peter Jackson. My apologies. Young Peter Jackson got his namesake off of the Black Prince Peter Jackson, who was a great boxer
oh
at that
yeah,
time, great
yeah.
of the late 1800s, who was a rival in some sense, or could have been a rival of John L. Sullivan. He wasn't able
Didn't
to
he
get a title shot with him.
didn't he fight in Australia or something like that?
Yeah, yes, he was born in the
Yeah,
West Indies, spent time in
oh yeah,
Australia, and really made Australia his home. Became a citizen there. So yeah, he represented Australia, and he was an innovative, scientific, great heavyweight at the time. Athletic, he had all the punches, and from all indications of what was read, many consider him to be the top heavyweight there in that time of Sullivan's reign. But him and
yeah,
Sullivan were never able to fight, and therefore Peter Jackson is a bit lesser known these days, even though he was popular back then. And there are really a lot, even the media at the time, they were
mm,
clamoring for John L. Sullivan to take on Peter Jackson, but it never happened.
yeah. Because I know there was this forum that I used to be a member that doesn't exist now. Uh, they were writing. Somebody was writing history too about these old time Australian boxers, and that there was
Oh
young
yeah,
Griffo and there was
oh
Peter
yeah, yeah,
Jackson. So
yeah, yeah.
and Jem Mace, I believe. I think he was
Oh yeah,
also
yeah. Jim Mace,
Australian.
yeah, he was good. Yeah, he
Mm.
did a lot of stuff there. He actually was hosting a tournament. That's how uh, Bob Fitzsimmons got on the map. He
All
was
right.
he won a tournament that Jim Mace actually twice put on. Bob
Mm.
Fitzsimmons won these tournaments because Bob Fitzsimmons he spent time in New Zealand, which is I think some people know, probably a little known thing, but he spent time there. And
Yeah.
hey, it's kind of small world in terms of how that
Yeah.
happened. Ultimately, yeah, he
Yeah.
ended up coming to America, being a dominant champion. Well, not dominant as a champion, but just a dynamic puncher, I would say. Because as a champion, of course, when he had the heavyweight championship, it was, I would say he didn't fight
But
as much.
they had like very crazy like rules over there. I'm not sure if it was Australia, but or Canada maybe. There was one fighter I remember that they wouldn't let him fight in USA because he was like blind in one eye, but he got to fight over there, still
Oh yeah,
either in Canada or Australia. I'm not sure if it was which one it was, but anyway, that really
hardcore
sounded
rules, hardcore
weird. Yeah.
rules, no holds barred.
Yeah, I mean, if you and I have one movie recommendation, by the way.
Oh yeah.
I don't know if you have HBO or HBO Max, but they have this new movie about this true story about this Japanese boxer who had one prosthetic leg, and he applied for a professional license in Japan, but he was turned down. So he went to the Philippines because he knew he could get it, and he got it there, and he
Mm-hmm.
had like 4 fights and won them all,
Oh,
and
cool.
then
What's that
yeah,
called?
it's called Jensen Punch. Yeah, it's with the with the G,
Oh,
Jensen
cool.
Punch, because that's the name of the gym in the Philippines where he trained, and so it's a very good movie, very nice.
All right, cool. I'm gonna check that
Mm,
out. Yeah,
yeah,
hey, feel good story right there. I
yeah,
mean, that's pretty interesting. I definitely want to check that out. Maybe we can talk about it again one day once I actually check it
yeah.
out.
They of course mention Manny Pacquiao in one scene.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Probably the most famous boxer out of the Philippines is, of course, at this
Yeah,
day and age. But yeah, probably yeah, when it's all said and done, yeah. If you
yeah.
think
I mean,
Filipino boxing, you think Manny Pacquiao for sure.
Yeah, if anybody put Philippines and Filipino boxing on the map, that was him, more than anybody, in
Yeah,
the
yeah,
world, man.
certainly. Yeah, they've had some
Yeah.
great boxers over the years as well, even some going way back in the
Oh
day.
yeah.
I think
Mm.
Pancho Villa was the first Filipino fighter to win a world title,
Pancho, yeah, yeah.
if I'm
And
not
then we have
mistaken.
Flash Elorde.
Oh yeah, Flash Allure. Yeah, I need to study up on him.
Yeah,
I know he was a good fighter. Seferino
yeah.
Garcia is another one who was very
Oh
good.
yeah. Seferino, that's right. He was also before, I think, yeah, before Flash, definitely.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Old Seferino,
The
but Flash Allure was
bolo
good.
puncher.
Oh yeah, yeah. So yeah, yeah, a lot of good history there for sure. But
Yeah,
yeah, so cool. But yeah, we wanted to spend some time talking to Jack Johnson again. Happy Juneteenth, all that good stuff. Of course,
yeah.
we're
That
here talking. This is Jack Johnson
Galveston
show.
Giant.
The Galveston Giant at 6'1", right?
Yeah.
Or 6 foot.
The
Yeah.
shortest giant ever.
Yeah, definitely interesting namesake. So, yeah, thinking about that and thinking about some of the modern times, of course, we'd be remiss if we didn't go over the fact that yesterday there was a title fight between two of the top light heavyweights in the world. Artur Beterbiev, undefeated, coming in 17-0 with 17 knockouts against Joe Smith Jr., who had two losses coming into the fight, but he broke his jaw in the loss of to Sullivan Barrera. I can't remember who the first one was against, but I think it was due to injury as well, right, or something like
Yeah.
that.
Was it two or three? Maybe it was three even before
Okay, yeah,
that.
maybe three then, maybe three.
Yeah.
But
I think he had like an early loss against someone, like a quite early stoppage. I think I read that was
okay,
in the start of his career. Yeah,
yeah. So,
yeah,
oh
but
yeah,
that
he came
was
in 28-3. Yeah, you're right. So yeah, he
yeah.
had lost to Eddie Caminero
Oh
coming
yeah,
into.
yeah.
I guess that
Like
was back in
fourth
there.
round or something. Maybe
I
I
think
don't
he
know.
actually got hurt in that fight and
Oh yeah,
had
right.
to stop. It
Yeah,
might have been a
right.
broken jaw or something.
Injury. He doesn't have a lot much luck with his jaw. That's for sure.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. So the titles on the line were so he came in with the WBO title. So you had the WBO and the IBF and WBC World Light Heavyweight
Hmm.
titles on the line, and of course the only remaining belt Dimitri Bivol has, a major belt that is, which is the
Yes.
WBA. But man, heck of a fight. I knew it would deliver. I knew it wouldn't go the distance. I thought it would last a little bit longer. I thought it would be over potentially 4 or 5 rounds. But
Yeah, me too. I think most of us expected it at last to least like 5 rounds or something. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So we know that it ended up being a TKO for Artur Beterbiev in the second round after basically dominating Joe Smith Jr., who
Hmm.
was never able to land anything of significance. Beterbiev. What did you think of that all action short affair?
Yeah, he caught him just on the right place, like on the temple and the top of the head. I think first knockdown was overhand right. That's right, to the top, over the
Yeah, yeah,
top.
caught him. It was yeah near the temple, near the ear area, sent him
Yeah,
down to a knee.
yeah, and he I think in the second round caught him in the temple first on the temple, and yeah. Yeah, it
Yeah,
was a good stoppage by the referee because he was,
certainly.
shaky legs and he was gotten really, you know, taking in some big heavy shots and been
Oh
down
yes.
3 times like in the second round. Yeah, so it was just pure the way the way our true destroyer should do it. That's how Better did it. He got to him before Smith could get to him.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
that's
certainly.
simple. Yeah,
Certainly, yeah, I was telling people that I knew. I should have told more. Like, hey, this is a can't miss fight right here,
yeah,
hey, because I knew that it would deliver. These are the type of matchups we want to see in the sport, and I commend those two for stepping in there. And Joe Smith,
yeah,
yeah, he's no slouch. So seeing the way that Arthur Abraham was able to dominate him, that just shows you the level of I mean, not Arthur Abraham, but Arthur Beterbiev. But that
Yeah.
just shows you the level of better
I
BF.
started to wonder when did he lose to
Arthur
Abraham?
Abraham, yeah. So Arthur Abraham, yeah.
No way he would ever be able to dominate Smith. No way, like
No, not at all. Yeah, he'd be too small there anyway because he wasn't a
yeah,
huge middleweight. Quite
yeah,
frankly, the
he
168
was.
pounder.
Yeah, like a lazy middleweight, you might say. Yeah, who didn't want to stop eating so much.
Yeah,
I
without a
remember
doubt.
I remember when he just moved up to 168, he was like, I saw that interview and he said in his broken English, it's good, I can more eat, I can more drink. You know, it was like,
Freaking
wow,
Arthur
that's
Abraham.
your main motivation for moving up. Come on.
Yeah, yeah, freaking Arthur. But yeah, Arthur Beterbiev, he
Yeah,
showed up in a
it's
major way.
just amazing, man. You know, he's got the timing, the reflexes, except for the obvious, the power, of course. But he
Yeah,
just has the real killer instinct, you know, and that's something you cannot like teach away. It's here, it's natural.
yeah,
So
it is natural. Hey, and for those that are wondering, yeah, this is in fact why Canelo Alvarez didn't take on Artur Beterbiev. If you wanted to
yep,
know, this is why right here. But I
he
commend Canelo for going up, doing what he did, and even taking on Bivol, who's another
yeah,
top dog there at light heavyweight. But Beterbiev is
yeah.
a different animal in terms of his approach and instincts towards a particular fight, especially when it comes to finishing fighters.
Yeah, he wrote the book on finishing fire. Simple as that. He graduated as a top student from that school. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah,
He's now 18 and 0, 18 straight knockouts. Of course, they're asking after the fight who do you like to face next. But for some odd reason, Anthony Yard is a mandatory for one of those
yeah,
titles. I guess the IBF. I think that he would slaughter Anthony Yard. What do you think of that fight?
yeah. And now, especially since Yard, I saw him say he said like, "Oh, better be slow. I can get him like that." Some sort of nonsense. I was like, "Come on, who do you think you are? Come on, like Bob Foster, Michael Spinks, or
I
something."
know. Like, come on.
Yeah,
So hopefully we don't get that. I know that Beterbiev, his choice is none other than his fellow Russian. That would be Dmitry Bivol. Bivol,
behold,
who
yeah,
just beat Canelo Alvarez, as we all mentioned, and who has been a champion for a good little while there with that WBA title. And this fight has been talked about over the years. It hasn't materialized as of yet, but now it seems
yeah,
that the stars are aligned because Bivol just fought. He's in recovery mode. Abraham or Beterbiev just fought.
better be
And of course, it didn't
Arthur,
take
yeah,
much out of him. Yeah, I keep saying, I keep thinking Arthur. Abraham.
RTB, yeah,
But yeah, so this fight didn't take much out of Beterbiev. So the stars seem to be aligned for us to potentially get that fight at some point later this year. What do you think of a potential matchup between those two and how that would ultimately
oh.
go?
Oh, that would probably been a great fight because you cannot beat, you know, when a puncher meets a boxer. It's always interesting, you know, to watch. Of course, it doesn't. It's no guarantee that it will be very entertaining because you
Yeah,
know boxers like technicians usually stay away from trading with punchers and just are content on boxing, outboxing on the outside and stuff like that, jabbing, yeah, defending themselves and stuff like that. But I think Bivo, he is a guy who cares about his legacy and how people look at him. He wants to prove himself. So I don't think he will really fight like Floyd Mayweather Jr. would do, or somebody like him. Just
yeah,
doing the elbows and stuff.
yeah, yeah,
But
yeah.
it would be a if nothing, very intriguing matchup, and that it would be like it would crown the winner would be the king at
Undisputed.
175. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
yeah. On paper for sure, it's in my opinion, it's one of the top 10 fights in the sport right now. at least on paper. And I know that many people are familiar with Bivol being sort of on the sort of streak he's on right now, where he hasn't gotten as many knockouts as he did when he started out. Because when he started out, he was very much a puncher, a boxer puncher, you could say, but he was knocking a lot of guys out. But he hasn't done so in this run, but it has been at a higher level, of course. So I think it's a top 10 matchup on paper, just in the sport in total. And it's very intriguing, as you mentioned, because you do have Bivol, the boxers. The one common opponent, the two have actually, I think the common opponent is Joe Smith Jr. I think that's the one common opponent, if I'm not mistaken. But between those two, of course, Bivol fought Joe Smith Jr. I would say that Bivol outboxed Joe Smith Jr. for 11 out of the 12 rounds. Got caught in, I believe it was the 10th round. He was on shaky legs, but he was able to recover, gather himself, and finish the fight. And it was a thorough outboxing of Joe Smith Jr. Outside of that round where he landed that punch. There wasn't a round you could technically give him, as far as I recall, unless maybe the 12th. But anyway, we have that dynamic. Then we just saw what Beterbiev did in steamrolling Joe Smith Jr. there within 2 rounds. So it does make it interesting as far as Bivol, who is this solid top-level boxer, and Beterbiev, who's a good boxer himself. Is not like he's a slouch, and he has probably more power, just thinking about it from a punch-for-punch perspective. And it'll be interesting to see how that dynamic plays out, because like you said, it could end up being a boring fight that doesn't have as much action, depending on the type of fight that Bivol fights. And if Abraham isn't able to bully, or if Beterbiev isn't able to bully his way in. So I think it's very intriguing for sure.
I mean, I doubt it would be as boring as Pacquiao versus Mayweather, but
still, certainly not that boring.
it could not live up to the hype, the expectations. Definitely, that could happen, because you got 2 of the biggest names in the division, fighting. People usually expect, now we're gonna see something special, a show. And then it turns out all right, a decent fight, but just another, fight, basically, with nothing special happening. That's what can happen here,
So this is certainly one to keep on the radar. Definitely, if it gets made. If not, then of course maybe that's something for next year, early next year. But now seems to be the right time, and the things seem to have shaped up well. Hopefully we don't get the. I mean, if we do get the Anthony Yard fight, of course I'll check that out in terms of Beterbiev versus Anthony Yard. If that needs to take place beforehand, as mentioned, I'm going to go ahead and put in my prediction now. I think that Beterbiev slaughters Yard probably in similar fashion. It depends on how Yard wants to fight. I don't, even as big as Yard is or whatever, and he talks about that, I don't know that he's going to go in there and actually try and bang with Beterbiev. He doesn't seem to be that type of guy.
No, I don't think so either, because, I mean, he has already lost like twice now, and he might maybe, that was pretty embarrassing, you might say. And
who doesn't have power? Arthur doesn't even have power, and he didn't bully his way in there on Arthur. He did in the second fight, but the first fight he didn't.
But I don't see him really being able to do much against Beterbiev, but because he's simply not that good, or that.
Now I would like to see Anthony Yard versus Joshua Buatsi. What do you think of that one?
That would be a really good fight. That would be, of course, much more realistic for both. I mean, I don't think either of them is yet ready, actually, for a guy like Beterbiev. Maybe never will be, but they are definitely ready to fight each other. And that would be really, that's a match that should happen, really.
Certainly intriguing. As far as I know, Yard is with Frank Warren, I believe, right? Queensberry Promotions. So so that means that they can do business with Eddie Hearn, who's there with Buatsi.
It's Hearn's
golden. Of course, if you're Yard, of course you want the fight that comes with the title, but I don't know if that one's going to happen. That being said, that Buatsi fight is very intriguing because Yard was looked at in a similar fashion as, okay, yeah, he might be that next guy at one point, and of course he still has time to become that guy,
yeah,
but he hadn't quite lived up to that early hype that he had received, and I think it was a very intriguing one for the two of them. And if Yard were able to beat Buatsi, I think he'd get due credit. Just as if Buatsi is able to pull it off, I think that speaks volumes as well and puts him in a place for one of those title
yeah,
shots probably thereafter.
yeah. And I just want to add something. This fight proved that actually made another one of Beterbiev former victims look good, and that's Alexander Gvozdik, because he was the one that lasted 10 rounds, and even was ahead on two of the scorecards when that fight was stopped, in the
Who was
10th
that?
round. So Gvozdik, the Ukrainian, he was the IBF champion before
Oh, okay.
Alexander. Yeah. I
Oh,
see
yeah.
now he started training again, and he was supposed to be back, but he doesn't have a fight scheduled yet. So I don't know what's happening.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah, good to
or
go.
he was actually I'm sorry, he was the WBC champion. Yeah, he's the guy who knocked out Adonis Stevenson.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah,
The tall blonde guy. Yeah,
yeah,
from
Gvozdik.
Ukraine. Yeah, Gvozdik. Yeah.
Oh yeah, Bolsdick. Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. That was a heck of a That's a heck of a fight. He's a very good fighter. That was a heck of a
Yeah.
performance there for Better Beterbiev. So he's been knocking
Mhm.
off some top level competition without a doubt. So
Yeah.
yeah, he hasn't fought since 2019, Gvozdik. So I know we had mentioned that a little while back. I think you had mentioned that he was potentially coming
Yeah.
back or whatever. But
Hmm.
interesting.
Yeah, he should be back, but I mean, I saw him, I follow him on Instagram. He was like in training again, but he hasn't gotten anything scheduled
Yeah, he
or
didn't have a
signed.
ton of fights here as a pro because he was only 18 fights. So he
Yeah,
probably still has something in the tank, and of course is a bit fresher now.
yeah. I don't know how old he is, but he can't be like much more than 30, like 31 or
I know
2
he's in his
something.
30s for sure.
Yeah, 33 maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, so yeah, something left in the tank there. So yeah, that'll be an interesting one. But yeah, Better be he handled this now. I had saw a post on Twitter asking like, did people have Better be in their top 10 list pound for pound? And that was prior to this fight. Or the question was more so why don't people have him in their top 10? I did mention that he had battled with some stints of inactivity, really, because he had a little
Yeah,
time there where he was on a run and then just became a little bit inactive. But I know he was having some promotional issues. But that being
yeah.
said, he seems to be back on his game at this particular point. So, what do you say with the way he dominated Joe Smith Jr.? Is that top 10 pound for pound consideration there?
Yeah, I would say so. Yeah, why not? I
Yeah, at
haven't
this
seen
particular point.
anyone else do that to Joe Smith Jr. And he's obviously at his best. He was before this fight. So yeah.
Hey, yeah, shout
Oh,
out Sierra
there
and
he is, hijacker.
hey Jekka. Appreciate you dropping in, buddy. Yeah, we were
Yeah,
talking Better Beterbiev versus Joe Smith Jr., which was a crazy and entertaining fight for the 2 rounds that it lasted.
yeah, 2 rounds, or you might almost say 1.5, or one and
Oh yeah,
three
yeah, you're right.
three quarters.
Yeah, one and
Yeah,
three quarters. Yeah, not
yeah.
fully 2 rounds for sure. And
Yeah,
I know a
that
lot of
was
us were
really. I
expecting.
was when I saw that. When I got up, and was what? Only 2 rounds? Come on, no way! It's like, oh my god, he's a beast. He's the
Yeah, when you
beast.
think about it, yeah, it's one of those definitely dominating performances that make you think, yeah, maybe he should
Yeah,
be on this pound for pound list. Of course, some people will have to come out, but I think better be at least number 10. You got to have him there at least number 10 if he's going to be in there, or if you're not even
yeah.
considering it. You can't tell me the way he's dominated and run through this top level competition. He's not up there, so I
Just
have to
for
really look into it. It's all opinions and everything, but yeah, top 10 pound for pound, baby.
Yeah, I mean, especially I know if he beats Bivol, he will he will be on everybody's should be
Oh
top
yes,
10. So, but I mean,
yes,
only the fact that he stopped a guy like Wozniak also that
yes.
speaks for itself, you know.
Speaks volumes. Speaks volumes for
Yeah,
sure. Hijeka and Jack Johnson, one of a kind, pleading fight.
that's
Then it
that.
says,
But
but a
yeah,
little like no other man's ever. Well, we'll see again. Yeah, Jack Johnson. Yeah, definitely polarizing times. He was able to come in and actually dominate during his time as champion, facing the fighters he did face at least. He was
mm,
able to, for the most part, dominate. Of course, he lost to Jess Willard. What was that? 1915.
maybe yeah,
I
I
believe it
think
was
so.
1915. But yeah, he was up until that point. Yeah, he was the man. But of course, he was running into issues with the U.S. law at that particular time. They were trying to
Yeah, it was
pretty much lock him up, so he
1950.
kind of went on a
In the
hiatus.
26th round, wow, he got knocked out in the 26th round. Come on, that
Yeah, it
was
was in Havana, Cuba, too.
oh
And I
yeah,
heard it was 100 plus degrees. So Willard
oh
was pretty much ready. They picked him out. They picked a specific big guy who had endurance and wasn't much of a boxer overall, but he had endurance and he was strong. He was a big guy. Johnson
yeah,
hadn't really fought. He fought any top level competition like that in a while, and of course
mm,
Johnson was looking at a means to get back to the U.S. and but yeah, Willard, big dude. He's not the most talented heavyweight, or won't even
yeah,
ever be mentioned amongst them in history. But he was a big guy for that time and able to do what he needed to do there to take out Jack Johnson with a hard, straight right, I
yeah.
believe, or it may have been a left. Yeah,
He
yeah, I think
was
it might have been left hand or
a true giant for
sitting
that
down.
time, especially even now. He would be considered really, really big.
Yeah, he was
Yeah,
fairly on par with these heavyweights, these big heavyweight giants that we have here today who are
yeah,
fighting. So Jess
yeah.
Willard.
Yeah, he didn't have that long career, but yeah, I mean, he made one defense, and then he was taken out by Jack Dempsey, and that was
Yeah, and an
pretty
epic
much it.
highlight. That's certainly an
Yeah,
epic highlight in the sports history right there, seeing Jack Johnson take out, or Jack Dempsey take out Jess Willard.
yeah, just like woodcutter cutting down a big tree. That's how it
Without a
looked.
doubt.
You know, I believe also Dempsey was like 6'1" or something like Johnson. The
Yeah, yeah,
same,
yeah,
like
yeah. He wasn't a huge heavyweight, but
yeah,
yeah, he put together an excellent combination, four-punch
strong as
combination.
hell. Yeah, yeah. He
Dropped him.
could
So if you
lick anybody. He would like say, "I could lick any SOB, you know, around."
have, without a
Yeah,
doubt, without a doubt, the phrase there. But cool, man. But yeah. We
yeah,
appreciate everybody jumping in. You know, we want to get on here. Shout out Hyphy, Hijeka, Ricky. But yeah, we wanted to come on here just to talk a little Jack Johnson, talk a little Arthur Better BF, Joe Smith Jr. with
yep,
everyone. But yeah, we'll have to do this again, Boz.
yeah, sure, for sure. Yeah,
But yeah,
I know.
yeah. If you haven't, go check out Boxing Haven on Facebook. Or follow Boz on YouTube as well. Of course, you know the 86 Boxing stuff is all the same on all the social media platforms. So yeah, we're gonna have another conversation here shortly. So tune in next week maybe. So I think that's the way it's gonna
Mm.
go.
All right, yeah,
All right. Well, thank you. Have a good one, everyone.
yeah. Have a good one.